Welcome back to Forward Progress, presented by FanDuel. We are back, and we're taking a look at the most overrated teams right now in market. I'm your host here, Jason Cooper, alongside Rob Pizzola. And Rob, let's just dive into things. First team on the list, longtime listener of this show, guy who appears on the show is going to be so pissed when he sees this. So, Jeff, I'm sorry, Rob. Why do you think the Chargers are overrated? Let's just hear it.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that no team in the NFL has given me more grief over the years than the Chargers. They're like the team I always think, every year in the offseason, or this is the year. And listen, we're a couple months out of the season right now.
Yeah.
I'm just talking around my group of friends. They already seem to be a trendy pick again this year. Jim Harbaugh's in town. Justin Herbert is healthy. The offensive line is looking elite with Alt and Slater. And yeah, I mean, there's no denying that stuff. Herbert's a top tier talent. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but we need to be honest. He's not in that elite tier A group. You can argue he's not firmly in tier B either. I wouldn't make that argument, but some could. That's not a shot at Herbert. It's just a reflection of where the bar is right now. If you want to make a Super Bowl run without an elite roster, right? And that's where I think the team has upside, no question, but there are major red flags that I think have them overvalued in the betting market. I mean, we look at last year, third in turnover differential, last year at plus 12. They recovered over 65% of all fumbles in their games. Those are things that are not sustainable year over year. And I look at their defense. To me, this is rough. Joey Bosa's gone, but even his declining production isn't a concern. It's the fact that there's very little depth behind Khalil Mack, who's in his mid-30s now, and Tuli Tuipulotu. Outside of that, the interior of the defensive line is like a major liability, and they didn't fix it. The secondary, Derwin James is a beast, but the corners are huge question marks. Dante Jackson and Benjamin St-Juste aren't moving the needle. I mean, their own fan bases wanted them out of town. Like, they wanted them gone. The depth is so thin at that position. I think opposing teams are going to be able to throw on them. And if they can't stop the run either, we're talking about a bottom 10 defense with a floor that is actually one of the worst in the entire league. Now, the Harbaugh factor might raise the floor a bit, but I think this team's ceiling feels very capped. If you're betting on a playoff run, you're counting on like elite coaching and a quarterback to overcome a lot of roster holes. And I just don't think that's a good bet. The market's pricing them at minus 124 to make the playoffs, 28-1 Super Bowl. Both feel quite high for me with the state of this current defense entering the year. So hate to do it. I'm off the Chargers bandwagon this year. I just don't think that they're as good or like a real contender in the AFC.
No, that's so fair. And I want to go back to what you said off the top of the show, where you said this team is giving you so much pain. I think back to, I think it was 3 years ago when we were at the old office in that basement, watching the live stream of the Chargers and Jags games. And I just can't imagine what was going through Jeff's mind for that game. But yeah, Chargers giving us a lot of problems. And again, like you mentioned, tougher schedule this year. I like their team. I like Harbaugh, but the way that they're built and the way that they seem to want to play is just not conducive to a team that's going to smash expectations.
And just to add to that as well, like, it's a little hidden disadvantage for them because when you see the schedule, every team plays, 8 home games, 8 road games, right? But a lot of those home games are not true home games for the Chargers, right? Like, home field advantage isn't created equal across the league. Some games for certain teams, they have a pretty decent sized home field advantage. You don't tend to see that for the Chargers either. So that's like another thing that's constantly working against them. They have these divisional games against the Chiefs and the Raiders and the Broncos and like lots of traveling fans. It's a challenge for them. It's another uphill battle to climb.
For sure. Uphill battle for them. And yeah, I don't know. Jeff, I'm sorry. Anyways, we'll move on to the next one. I can hear his keyboard click-clacking already. I'm going to go up next here with most overrated team. One of my most overrated teams in market right now I have is the Indianapolis Colts. To preface before I talk about the Colts, I just want to mention that like I love the moves they made this offseason. They added Travarius Ward, added Cameron Bynum. I thought their secondary needed a boost, and they did a great job in doing that. I also think they actually have a pretty strong defensive line, right? DeForest Buckner, Latu Latu, Kwity Paye, Grover Stewart. They have a pretty decent defense. But let's take a look at their offense. And I look at their offense, and you know what? Their offensive line is pretty good as well, right? PFF has them ranked as a top 13 offensive line in the NFL. I think their skill position players are great. And Josh Downs, I think Michael Pittman Jr. is also a little bit underrated. USC, let's go. Who else do they have? Adonai Mitchell, Alec Pierce, good weapons. They drafted Tyler Warren. Like this team should be a good team. But wait, this is the most overrated video. So why am I talking about them? It's because their quarterbacks stink. They are atrocious. And I just have close to zero faith in them whatsoever this year to come even close to their win total. Right now, they're being priced as a 7.5 win total team, slightly juiced towards the under, -120. I don't see how they're going to get there. I think it's still a little bit too high because, listen, we've seen Daniel Jones play okay for one season in the past. Anthony Richardson has looked good for maybe 10% of the plays he's played in the NFL. I'm kind of out on Shane Steichen right now. I don't think this team is shaped for success. I like the pieces. I think they're you put a good quarterback on this team, and I think this team can do very well. But the quarterback is so important in football, and I just think that position is atrocious for them. So for me, the 7.5, it still feels a little bit too high, and that's why I'm taking them as one of my most overrated teams in the NFL.
This one's an interesting one because I can see a high upside case for the Colts if Anthony Richardson gets benched early. I'm at the point where, I mean, listen, it's still early in his career. Maybe he develops his passing, but his accuracy is so atrocious. It is not NFL caliber. Like, you just don't see games, and I might be exaggerating, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's had a game where he went like 7 for 24 in terms of, like, he has numbers that you just never see. And I feel like if they give up on that project and they go to Daniel Jones at some point, they could have a decent year. I mean, listen, the weapons at wide receiver, probably amongst the worst in the NFL. Like, they're deep, but there's no like super high end talent. Like Michael Pittman as your number one, Alec Pierce is your number two. Not great, right? But the O-line can hold up if healthy. I do like the interior quite a bit, especially Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, right tackle. Defense that is kind of like sneaky, has a lot of good players that just have struggled to stay healthy. I do like Steichen probably more than you do. I don't want to say I'm not in or out on the Colts. Let's just put that way. But if I see a scenario where, listen, everything is relative to price, right? But if there's a scenario early in the year where Anthony Richardson gets benched and it becomes like publicly available information, I'm buying the Colts when that happens, right? Like, I think this is a case where Richardson starts the year and he's clearly their worst quarterback. They just kind of have to start him because of where he was drafted. But I could see a scenario where Daniel Jones catches lightning in a bottle in this offense. And this is not a guy who likes Daniel Jones at all. Like, we talk about his career, historically turnover prone. There's always some sort of brain fart. I don't think he's any good, but I think he could be very serviceable in this offense and take them to at least a ceiling that's much higher. Because Richardson to me is he just ain't it.
That's the biggest thing for me. That Richardson, it just doesn't provide them, like, the quarterbacks there. Just, it feels like there's no floor for me when it comes to this team. But maybe Steichen can coach it out of them. I don't know. I'm less optimistic about that. But yeah, I'm curious to hear if people think that was a crazy take. Drop your comments in the comment section down below.
I'd like to see the comments on this video as well. As, listen, at the end of the day, these videos are the toughest to do. Overrated, because you get these fan bases that come in and be like, oh, what's wrong with you? And it's all relative to market, right? So typically speaking, I don't tend to find teams that are in like this low to mid range that I think are super overrated. It does happen. That's not to say you can't find like a 7.5 win team that you think is like a 5 win team. That can happen. Typically, though, I'm looking a little bit higher up the board. But yeah, I'm interested to see what the fan bases think about this.
Yeah, curious to hear that as well. We're going to get into our next two teams. But before we do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors over at FanDuel. It might be the offseason, but if you want to bet on NFL futures, FanDuel is the place to go for that action. We love betting futures at FanDuel. They have so many options, from player award props, who's going to be the season leader for passing, rushing, receiving, team futures, who's going to win the Super Bowl, win totals, including alts that you can all parlay together. The excitement for something new goes live at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/forward progress to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/forward progress. All right. Colts, Chargers, two overrated teams in market. Rob, who's your next overrated team?
Yeah, this is it was tough because we're doing two teams each. There's definitely some honorable mentions I could go with. I think this will piss off the most people. It's not exactly why I'm picking it, but I think the Detroit Lions, they're the feel-good story of last year. The franchise finally looks like it belonged in like the true contender tier, right? But heading into this year, I think the market's too high on them. 10-1 Super Bowl, second best team in the NFC. I don't think enough people are talking about how much this team lost off the field. And both coordinators are gone. That is a huge deal. I think it's a bigger deal than what is being factored into the market, right? This is all relative to market. Ben Johnson in particular was the mastermind behind their offense. Creativity, balance. Like the way he made Jared Goff look comfortable in every situation, that's not easy to replace. And with Frank Ragnow retiring, Kevin Zeitler gone on the offensive line, I think the interior O-line looks shaky for them. That's a bad mix for a quarterback like Goff who needs protection, especially on the interior to thrive. Defensively, they collapsed in the second half of the year. Now, injuries were a huge part of the story. I'm not going to pretend like they weren't completely decimated because they were. But if Aiden Hutchinson isn't 100% or the secondary doesn't improve fast, particularly Terry and Arnold, they're going to get exposed again, especially with a brutal schedule early that includes road games at Green Bay, Baltimore, Cincy, KC. Like those are 4 of their first 6 games of the year on the road. I think they're a playoff team, but no chance in hell I'd lay -188 to make the playoffs, which is the price at FanDuel right now. I think this version of the Lions is much more likely to take a small step back before they make a real leap forward potentially next year. I just think the coordinators, the roster construction, I do see this being a down year for them. And it's weird to say because they've been so consistently good now under the Dan Campbell regime after year 1. But I don't think this is it for them this year.
Yeah, and if they do well this year, it almost vaults Dan Campbell into that like elite tier of head coaching because of that shuffle that they went through at coordinators. There's so much uncertainty there. Right now, the Lions are 10.5, slightly juiced towards the under -130 with their win total over there. And yeah, you know, I'm fully in agreement with you here. I was early on the Detroit Lions fade train. Just again, like all those things you mentioned, I just think Ben Johnson is probably their biggest loss. So yeah, sorry, Kanish. Hopefully, I'm curious if
he's gonna love this that we've roasted his team. He's gonna be
the entire offseason.
100%.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll. There's gonna be a Twitter picture out there saying I'm an idiot, but for me. But anyways, let's move on here. Let's go on to my overrated team, my last overrated team, and I swear, guys, we're not doing this because like we're trying to jab at people who work with us at the Hammer, but I'm going with the Miami Dolphins. Sorry, George. I just think there's a lot of issues with this team here. I still think Mike McDaniel, is a great head coach, but like the pieces there are just really, really scary for me. On offense, you lose Teron Armstead and Robert Jones, which is like almost 2,000 snaps for your offensive line. You're replacing them with a rookie, a new signing in James Daniel. They might use like guys they already had on their team to try and like patchwork this offensive line together. But this is like a bottom tier offensive line in the NFL. On top of that, they still have 2 very strong weapons in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill's kind of on the wrong side of that aging curve. He's 31. He's kind of proved that aging curve a little bit wrong, but it's like at some point we're going to see Tyreek Hill fall off a little bit, and it felt like he did a little bit last year. My biggest concern with their offense comes with, of course, their quarterback situation, because Tua Tagovailoa, that guy is paper. He's going to get, if he gets hit and he gets another concussion, the floor is like the basement for this team, right? Like their backup quarterback, I think, is it Zach Wilson? Like, I have no confidence in this team if Tua gets hurt and Zach Wilson has to come in. And I get you can say that about almost any single team if their starting quarterback gets hurt, but I feel like it's different and more fair to say with Tua, with his serious concussion issues that we've seen in the past. On top of that, their defense does not help them out at all. They just traded away Jalen Ramsey. Their cornerback grouping looks like one of the worst in the league. Cam Smith, Storm Duck, Kader Kahua, like those are not great pieces. And I mean, just their entire defense doesn't feel to be strong. There was 1 year, 2 years ago where this defense looked really good. And I think that was more so, obviously a lot of pieces turned over, but that was very clearly a Vic Fangio bump more than anything else. I don't think that I think this team is a little bit too high in terms of market right now. So for me, this is a big overrated team just because I see this floor, if even without Tua getting hurt, this floor, okay, we're going to need Tua to get hurt for the floor to be the basement, but I think this is a low floor team here. Current win total is priced between that 8.5 and 6.5 range. Under 8.5 is minus 190. Over 6.5 is minus 175. So around that 7 win range. Again, I think the floor might be a little bit lower than what people are expecting here.
Yeah, I think it's just an easy team to game plan against. Like, if McDaniel can get something out of this offense that is even close to years past, I mean, he solidifies himself, in my opinion, as one of the best offensive minds in football. I know he's been up and down over the years, but like they're going to go into this year with Austin Jackson at right tackle again, who, in my opinion, is not very good. They need Patrick Paul to get better at left tackle. I think this is the second year out of Houston right now. Like, to have those tackle positions, I mean, listen, they've always tried to get the ball out of Tua's hands quickly, and they'll continue to do that and try to develop some game plans around it. But at some point, it's just really hard, and they need to be able to give him a couple seconds in the pocket where if read one is not there, he can pivot and move to something else. I think a great point on the cornerback group. The one thing I will say about the Dolphins, I quietly do really like their defensive line. I love Zach Sealer. Jalen Phillips, to me, had a bit of a down year last year. He'll be a lot better. Chop Robinson, to me, is like a star in the making. They have Chubb there as well. The defensive line can overcome a little bit of the issues that they're going to have at corner. But ultimately, I see too many holes with the Dolphins. Like, you're going to have opposing OCs and DCs every single week that have a very clear attacking point. And I don't think the Dolphins have enough to be able to overcome that. So agree with a lot of your points there. I would like to see Miami be good. Growing up, I grew up like through the Dan Marino era, and I like when the Dolphins are competitive as part of the league. I just think that they have too much to overcome this year.
It's a big hill to climb for them. Before we head out, any honorable mentions you want to drop here for any teams that you feel like you couldn't add here? I know I made you only pick 2 teams, but I'm sure you have other teams that you feel like are overrated.
Yeah, I considered a few others. One was the Vikings. I think there's for obvious reasons. Just came out of nowhere last year, put together a huge year. The other one that might be a surprise to some people, because I do love the quarterback, is Tampa Bay. I love what Baker did last year, but Liam Cohen gone now. This is the third OC in 3 years for Baker. That kind of turnover in the NFL is rarely a good thing. And even if you believe in the weapons, which I do, it's hard for them to be like a top 5 offense right out of the gate with a new play caller. The defense, Hassan Reddick is there. They have some young corners that I don't trust. They needed to blitz at one of the highest rates in the league to generate pressure. To me, that's not a sustainable formula over a full season, even with a defensive guru like Todd Bowles, especially when you have this type of secondary, which is young and unproven. So I could see Tampa taking a step back. I don't think that their market prices are egregious. Like, they're minus 140 to make the playoffs right now at FanDuel. They're plus 110 to win the division. I mean, I definitely would not bet those. I'd be cautious, but I don't think they're egregious, which is ultimately why I didn't put them in here. But yeah, it would pain me because I love Baker, honestly. I do think he's so much better than people give him credit for because of the seasons in Cleveland, or the main season where he had injury to his throwing shoulder, threw a ton of interceptions, was in a lot of bad positions. But I could see this being the year where they come down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, that's so fair. And I love your take on the Vikings there, because it feels like maybe the market's gone too far on them. Because I remember when we started off doing these videos in the offseason, they were like plus 600 to win their division. Now they've crept all the way up to, I believe, they're like plus 270 right now. So like we've seen, I don't have their win total numbers off the top of my head, unfortunately, but we've seen the market really love Minnesota Vikings and kind of pile on them as the offseason has gone on. And I wonder at what point have we gone too far with the quarterback uncertainty?
I think that the general sentiment with the Vikings is that their coaching staff is really good. And it's just kind of like a plug and play type of system, which it very well could be, because I don't think Sam Darnold is anything, really. I don't. And he had like a coming out party there. So who knows? Maybe we see McCarthy step in as a rookie and perform well. I'm just not quite. I don't want to diminish or like rag on. I think people put KOC in like this echelon or this tier that he's not deserving of being in just yet. I think he's a good coach, well above average. But I think what you're seeing there with the Vikings is just a belief in the coaching staff. And I can understand that point of view, but I'm just not there.
Yeah, fair enough. To give them credit, like you said, that coaching staff is very good. Probably the best play caller duo in the league. I think that's pretty fair to say in Flores and KOC. But yeah, those are great honorable mentions. Love it. Love it. Anyways, that wraps it up for us here today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, do us a favor, smash that like button. Goes a long way for us in the algorithm. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well. And we want to hear your thoughts. Any teams that we missed on being overrated in market. Any
Someone
bad
says
takes
the
that we
Cowboys, you're banned from the channel, by the way. Underrated Cowboys this year.
I love that. All right, guys, that's about it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.